Howdy, and welcome to the Feed Bandit podcast, where we talk all things hunting and introduce you to the most innovative hunting gear and services. Here are your hosts, Jimmy Byrne and Richard Kinchlow. Hey folks, have you ever wished that there was an easier way to find the hunting feeds, supplies, and services you need, when and where you need them? If so, check out our hunter search at feedbandit.com, where you can see what hunting suppliers are in your area or are on the way to your land. Don't waste any more precious time searching Google or calling around for feed, blinds, feeders, or even outfitters. Just use our targeted search for hunters, the Feed Bandit Hunter Search, over at feedbandit.com. We'll find your feed.
Well, howdy there, folks. Corn Bandit coming back at you with another solo podcast today. This will be my first one doing by myself since I was in the mountains of Colorado. So, unfortunately, our good buddy Jimmy could not join us. He was attending a garden club meeting, so he felt that attending a garden club meeting would be more important than talking about hunting. So, obviously, that's not true, but it would be really funny if it was. Anyway, so, yeah, so here we are. We are about to embark on the journey that is the Texas rifle season. So this is approximately a week before the opening weekend of deer season with rifles. Of course, a lot of Texans have already been out there with their archery tackle. I've seen quite a few really nice looking deer that they've been taken, that have been taken so far rather. But now is the time where if those deer just aren't coming in within 30 or 20 yards, that you can pop them with a rifle. So, again, some of our listeners that are from other states, maybe your rifle season or muzzle loader or shotgun or, whatever, cannon, whatever, it may have already started. But here in Texas, the first weekend of November is the official opening of our Texas rifle season. So, very, very excited. Just like the opening of dove season, it really is one of the more, cherished days, if you will, of all Texas hunters. So, time to get out there early in the morning and in the evening and enjoy a campfire and lots of camaraderie. And it's just a great time of year, needless to say. So, since I'm running the show by myself today, I thought was trying to think about something to talk about, and I kind of thought that, well, you know what, let's talk about some of the things that, just in getting prepared for opening weekend of rifle season. Now, of course, some of these you already should have been doing, right? But if you haven't done it, or if you've got the ability to hunt Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, maybe you can spend Saturday doing it and whatnot. So, anyways, wanted to go through just a couple of these. Some of these are safety tips. Others are just kind of, in general, hey, do this, don't forget to do that, so on and so forth. So I've got a little list here that we will run down. God, first and foremost, talking about safety, make sure that when you are climbing into your blind, whether it's a traditional tower stand, or it's up in a tree, man, make sure you're safe, okay? I know a lot of people are like, well, duh, of course. Yeah, of course I'm going to be safe. But I just heard about a story a couple of weeks ago with a fella who was walking to his deer stand. I believe it was another state. And it was in the dark. I don't think he was using a flashlight. He was just using the moonlight, I think. And he tripped and fell. And sure enough, hit his head in the rock and died. Just a horrible, horrible story. And so you never know. I mean, obviously you want to keep the trail to your deer blind nice, and you don't want to make it too big, right? You don't want to disturb things too much, but make it clear. Bring a flashlight when you're in the morning or in the evening. I don't care how bright that moonlight is. Bring a flashlight. Now, I know a lot of y'all rely on your phone, and I do too, for a flashlight. But always having a good flashlight is important for not only finding your way to and from, but also, if you actually shoot a deer and you have to track it. So I think that's kind of my first little point. Another horrific story, but it certainly happened. Be careful. If you haven't been to your lease or your ranch and you don't know what's up in your tower stands, obviously this is something you should have done about a month ago, right? cleaning them out, if you got in the open windows, things of that nature, just be real careful when you open those blinds. We had a good friend of mine who was on a lease near Lubbock, and just a horrible story. Unfortunately, in the November of 2008, he one of his lease mates was climbing up on a tripod, and unfortunately ran into a really big yellow jacket nest. And of course, the guy climbing up in the tripod panicked, and he fell. And unfortunately, he happened to impale himself on a T-post. So just a absolute horrific hunting accident, and one that probably couldn't have been prevented, right? But you just got to be really careful. And that kind of brings me to another point. A lot of Texas hunters do use T-posts to secure tripods and blinds and things of that nature because of the cattle, right? Well, because of that, every time I've done that on Rancho Bandito, because of this horrible incident we heard about, we always try to sink our T-post in at an angle, so that if, God forbid, you were to fall, it wouldn't, you wouldn't impale yourself, really. Also, I think at all the major hardware stores, they sell those orange caps that you can put on there. I think they have them for rebar, but I'm pretty sure they got them for fence posts as well. So, again, just something to consider. I hate to start off the podcast here with something so horrific, but I definitely think it's something that you got to think about and consider. Also, I grew up in the age of I call them the big South Texas tower stands, that were like 15 foot, and it was basically a box with a ladder that went straight up. And it was a little scary, especially when you got the dew that freezes on those steel stairs. It was kind of hairy, getting up in there. So one thing that I always did with me is I always brought a rope with me that was about 20 foot long. And, I'm not saying this thing's got to be some gigantic rope that you rappel with, right? But something that you can secure your weapon with and get up there in the blind, make sure that you're okay and taken care of, and then pull your weapon up, okay? It's a real simple step, but it's going to potentially save your life, and then obviously your rifle too. You don't want your rifle slipping off your shoulder. It bumps that scope. You could be in trouble. So, bring a piece of rope with you. Binoculars, man, oh man, oh man. Next to your rifle, I think binoculars are probably one of the most important pieces of equipment you can have. First and foremost, again, we always talk about the feeders and how awesome it is in the state of Texas, how we can sit there and look at deer and study deer, right? To find the correct one to shoot, whether it be a doe or a management buck or a cull buck or having the trophy buck. Okay, so having a good set of binoculars is absolutely crucial. More importantly, you don't want to put your gun out that window, right? Because obviously an accidental discharge is going to ruin your hunting trip or that hunt, and it's also going to scare the living crap out of you. So always make sure you've got your binoculars. Something that should have been done over a couple of months ago is make sure your gun's on sight in. Okay, a lot of folks just assume, well, hey, my gun was working great in January, and when I shot it again in March, and it was working just fine. And that may be the case, of course, unless you drop a gun or it experiences some sort of trauma. I mean, there's really no reason for that scope to be off. But one of the biggest mistakes people make is first of all, making sure their gun's not zeroed in, but also making sure that they can handle it, okay? And make it, and by handle it, I mean getting used to that recoil again. I don't care if you've been shooting your whole life. That first time you shoot a gun, okay? That first time you shoot a gun, it's been 6 months, something of that nature, you are going to flinch. You are going to jump. So, heaven forbid, you don't want to jump when you're shooting at an animal because you're going to wound that thing. So again, if you've got time, get out there, put a couple of bullets down range. It'll be good for you, for your confidence. And remember, we owe it to that animal to fire your weapon and put that animal down quickly and as humanely as possible. In regards to shooting, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make when they are our hunting with a rifle is not squeezing the trigger. Okay, and that's something that is very difficult, especially for the kiddos too, right? Because they're anticipating that kick and that bang, you know. So make sure you really work on squeezing that trigger. I sound like I'm talking to my daughter here, but you know, squeezing that trigger, let the gun surprise you. So you know, get your breathing under control, and again, squeeze that trigger, and that bullet should go right where you were aiming. Tag your animal, okay? I think a lot of people get really excited. You know, they've shot this deer or they shot that deer, and they get all nimbly bimbly, and you know they're celebrating, and all of a sudden they get back to camp, and guess who's there? Johnny Law, okay? And then you get in trouble. So make sure that you tag your deer, you know, the second you put it down. Another little factoid that you need to know, especially in Texas, is that on the back of your license, you've got a harvest log, and you need to make sure that you fill that out. It is a part of the whole tagging process. Now, if you're under managed land deer permits, MLDP, like Rancho Bandito, you don't have to fill out that tag log. But basically, if you take a deer tag from your license and put it on an animal, you've got to fill out that harvest log. And I read something, I guess it was about a week ago, that was saying, it was from the Texas Game Wardens, saying that was one of the most, that was the most common ticket that they issued, and have so since this law came into fruition, which I think has been a couple of years now. So make sure you tag your game, carry some zip ties and a pin with you. Oh, and make sure that pin works. Okay, I've had a couple of times where I almost had to cut my finger and use my blood to fill out one of my turkey tags. So, you know, swap out that pin every couple of years. Seems silly, but again, you don't want to get stuck out there. All right. Daylight savings time. You know, every single year at Rancho Bandito, you know, we set the feeders up so that we can hunt in October. Again, we're under MLDP, so we can hunt in October. But then daylight savings time comes, and we just can't remember, okay, do we, you know, what do we do with our feeders? Do we do anything? So if you need to make adjustments to your feeders, make sure you do it. Make sure you do it really this weekend, because daylight savings time comes into effect on Sunday. So you don't want to show up the following weeks and have that feeder going off late or earlier. See, I can't even remember what it is now. So just make sure you get that taken care of. As far as processing the deer is concerned, you know, with the coming of age of the ice chest, with the big Yetis and the bisons and all that kind of stuff, really got an awesome way of holding a lot of ice and holding a lot of meat. So something that we do at Rancho Bandito is we've got dedicated meat coolers, and they are the bison coolers, and they're just phenomenal for filling up with ice and putting your deer parts in there and the tags and all that kind of fun stuff. And that way it keeps your meat nice and fresh. Okay, obviously put it in the shade, right? Because you don't want any, you don't want that ice to melt. And I don't care what cooler you got, but you keeping that meat nice and iced is really the proper way to treat it. You know, if you've got a scenario where it's cold enough and you can leave that deer hanging, you know, by all means do that. A quick little side story for you here. When I was hunting in Throckmorton, we'd hang our deer from a swing set. And I remember one weekend, it was a really, really cold weekend, and somebody had shot a doe early on. And so that doe had been sitting up there since, I would say, called a Thursday, right? So we came back Friday evening from the hunt, and somebody else had harvested an animal, and we were hanging it up. And that's when we looked at the carcass of this doe that had been shot. And again, it was cold enough. In fact, it was below freezing even during the day. So we could leave the meat hanging. But the carcass had just been torn up. And you could tell that something had gotten on the carcass either that night or maybe we just didn't notice it during the day, and started to chew on the hams of this doe. But it wasn't a whole lot. So we said, okay, it is what it is. We'll just, we got to watch it. There's nowhere else we could put it. We didn't have game cameras back then. So, fast forward to that Saturday, we had one of the Leafs members come back a little bit early but come back early from the evening hunt. And, sure enough, they turned the road and, there was a big old bobcat on top of the deer carcass. And they were driving a Jeep Willys at the time. And so they shut that Jeep Willys off. And then with that 308, put that bobcat down. That was on top of that doe carcass. But it was just a really, really, really kind of cool story. And honestly, it's kind of the risk you take. I'm actually pretty sure that, or I'm actually surprised I have not heard of that happening more often. But, that was a really, really cool weekend and, a pretty cool experience and obviously a memorable time. So, going back to just hanging deer up, as far as transporting deer, a lot of folks this day and age are quartering their deer. Like I say, putting them in the coolers is a great way of transporting them. Keeps the meat fresh, nice and easy, but there are still folks that'll shoot them and leave them whole, and that's great. That's fine too. But do the sport of hunting a big favor if you can, and don't just have a hoof sticking out the back of your pickup, or don't put the thing to the top of the Suburban. Okay, and admittedly that's what we did back in the '80s, right? But this world's gotten so butthurt over everything with animal rights and politics and all that BS that drives me absolutely nuts. We don't need any more pressure from all these anti-idiots. So if you've got a deer, all right, and you're driving a Suburban, get a hitch haul. Okay, they can't be more than about $150. And if you're living the outdoor lifestyle, you'll definitely get use out of this thing. Get a hitch haul, get a big blue tarp, and a lot of bungee cords. With that deer, you can actually saw off the arms and the legs, okay, but not get into the meat, so just kind of where the shanks are, right? And then put that thing on the on the hitch haul, wrap it up in that blue tarp, and nobody will ever know. That's what my father and I started doing when we were coming back from Throckmorton and Albany, and it was great. We would just stick ice in there in the cavity, and it would ride all the way back to the processor from Throckmorton to Dallas with no problems. So that's just another little tip for you. I see a lot of people doing that, which obviously is really good. But anyway, so that is my list of little tips and advice and tricks. I'd say, actually I got one more. And that is, obviously, get the children involved, okay? Back when I was growing up, opening day of deer season was kind of was a dads only, right? So the dads would go out there opening weekend. I get it. I totally get it. And in fact, whenever I get, to where we can do that, I'm going to be doing that, right? But also just don't forget to bring the kiddos with you. It's so important. In this day and age, these kids are so preoccupied with everything they got going on, piano school, ballet, whatever it may be. Even if you call the guy's weekend, but your buddy's son, is playing football and he can only get it. Cancel the guy's weekend. Get those kids out there. It is just so important to the future of our sport. So, anyways, with that being said, happy opening day of the Texas rifle season, everybody. We hope you have a great one. Oh, and Jimmy does send his best. He texted me. So, Jimmy says hello. You all remember your safeties and your safety tips, that is. And, send us some pictures. We'd love to see pictures from you guys. See how you've been doing out there in the field. So, with that being said, always support your local feed store. If you forget something, no problem. Go to your local feed store. They're going to have everything they need for you. So, anyways, adios, my friends. Talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Feed Bandit podcast. Just a reminder to text the word bandit to 345-345. And when you do, you'll join our email list where we'll send killer deals on innovative hunting products and services, along with entertaining tips and tricks straight to your inbox. You don't want to miss out. So again, text the word bandit to 345-345, and we look forward to seeing you on the hunt. Until next time, have a good one, and remember to support your local feed store.